In this video, I'm going to explain how diabetics are losing weight and getting lean by eating more food, by eating more carbohydrates, and how when diabetics come to us, how we position their plans and their meals for them to improve insulin sensitivity, reduce glucose levels, and improve overall health, allowing them to lose a significant amount of weight. So this is going to be the antagonistic effect of high carbohydrate diets. And getting right into the video, if you guys don't know me by now, my name's Adam Bundle. I'm an online metabolic specialist, and I specialize in the manipulation of cellular metabolism. So we specialize at the 1%, our company, in metabolism. We specialize in metabolic processes that allow our clients to eat more food and lose more weight. We have over 46 different testimonials on this YouTube page. We've worked over 1,000 different clients in 7 different countries, getting them extremely lean using a metabolic approach. So with that being said, let's get right into the video. I want to give you guys a ton of value right here. And it's going to open your eyes a lot on like what's currently going on in society and why people are excessively getting diabetes problems, insulin regulation problems, blood sugar problems. And so we're going to dive right into it. And so what really sparked this video is going to be one of our really great clients. His name's Waleed. Waleed's a great guy, 49 years old. He came to us as a diabetic, and we were able to not only get him down 10 pounds, but he's eating 200 grams more carbohydrates a day and 800 calories more per day. And here's what he said in one of his check-ins with us, because our clients check in once a week, every single week, so we can adjust their macronutrients, manipulate their plans for their own body compositions. This is what he said in one of his check-ins. Insulin resistance and staying steady, sugar spikes dropping quickly after meals and post-meal walks, even with 325 grams of carbs per day. Staying 205 for the past 3 months with almost 700 calories on a daily basis. Looking forward to the next A1C checkup. So he was eating 150 grams of carbohydrates on the left right here, 350 grams of carbohydrates on the right at 2,900 calories. And so like you're already probably wondering like, how is this even possible? How are people losing weight eating more food? And let me show you, because I'm going to show you not only Waleed's side-by-sides and the changes that we made on a day-to-day basis, but I'm going to explain to you in grave detail how we made this possible from a metabolic level and how we structured his plan to allow his metabolism to heal itself, regulate insulin levels, regulate glucose better. So when he came to us, this was our initial consultation with our team. Waleed's number one goal is to get to 10%, 15% body fat, build muscle, lower cholesterol, get off metformin, and be an example to his kids. So we work with a lot of fathers. Our ideal client range is typically right around 40 to 65 years old. We have a few gentlemen upwards of 67 years old. Diabetic and only eating 100 to 150 grams of carbs. Slow titration upwards will probably help him feel good. He trains consistently, but needs to dial in effectiveness to maximize fat loss. So I know you're probably wondering, like, how is this even possible? Like, how are diabetics eating more carbohydrates, losing more weight, improving insulin sensitivity? And this isn't just like a one-time case. We currently work with upwards of 400 different clients right now inside of our community at the 1%. And a lot of them do come to us in this specific situation. And here's some of them very briefly, if I can walk you through some of the testimonials of these guys who have came to us in this specific situation, and then I'll get right back into the value for you guys. So Heath came to us, just figured I'd share some news. I've been in the program 2 months, and my labs came back. The doctor personally called me to tell me whatever I'm doing, keep doing them. A lot of the markers, I was off last year. I'm in dead range, and his comments were some of the best labs I've seen for guys this air. Jason Bryant. Fast forward to September when I saw a video of Adam's YouTube, because a lot of these clients do come from YouTube. And if you are interested, the link will be below. But after a day going down the rabbit hole, I booked a call and joined the program. I love carbs, so this was an easy decision. I was a little worried about getting back to the gym, but now I'm glad I did. Anyways, long story short, I was at 12.4 A1C in June, now 7.2 as of last week. Jeffrey, I had a similar experience 3 weeks ago with my labs. HbA1c was the lowest it's been in 20 years. And then Court, just got my labs back. My A1C went from 5.3 to 5. I was in pre-diabetes range before I started metabolic priming, and that was me fasting, low carb, and going to the gym regularly. My C-reactive protein also dropped from average range of low for cardiovascular risk. Also, first time it's been in this range in years. It's the first time for a stressful averaging 5 to 6 hours of sleep, so this isn't even optimal. Who knew carbs will be so healing? So that's the whole purpose of this video. Explain, one, how carbs are extremely healing, but you have to put the body in a correct environment for them to be healing, right? You can't just add carbohydrates and just expect them to heal things. Like they need to be in the correct environment to get the maximum amount of results. So I want you guys to understand the two main factors at play when it comes to health regulation: insulin, blood sugar, cortisol, everything in between. So the first really big factor at play is insulin and cortisol, okay? So there is an antagonistic relationship between insulin and cortisol, acting as a counter-regulatory hormone to insulin, opposing its blood sugar-lowering effects by increasing glucose production and promoting insulin resistance, especially during times of stress, to ensure energy from the brain, while insulin works to lower blood sugar and promote storage. Cortisol achieves this by suppressing insulin release, boosting glucose production, and making tissue less responsive to insulin, ultimately leading to higher levels of blood sugar levels, which can cause hyperglycemia or diabetes if chronic. So how cortisol antagonizes insulin: inhibits insulin secretion, increases glucose production, and induces insulin resistance. Okay, so I want you to keep this in mind. High elevated levels of cortisol will induce insulin resistance. Cortisol makes up muscle and fat cells less sensitive to insulin signal, impairing the ability to take up glucose and increasing free fatty acids, further contributing to insulin resistance. Acute stress. In short bursts, cortisol acts to provide quick energy, but it needs to be balanced by insulin. Prolonged levels of cortisol, as seen in conditions like Cushing syndrome, chronic stress, overwhelm the body's ability to manage glucose, leading to persistent hypoglycemia, insulin resistance, and increased risk for type 2 diabetes. So basically, there's an antagonistic relationship between insulin and cortisol, right? When insulin is high, cortisol is low. When cortisol is high, insulin resistance is, our issue, right? So we need both. And I know that like the internet has like pushed this this narrative that like insulin is such this bad thing and carbohydrates create insulin. And so carbohydrates by definition are bad because they create insulin. But the truth is that insulin lowers cortisol levels. So these guys you see that come to us with high levels of cortisol after dieting from years on in a never-ending cycle have high levels of cortisol, high levels of bodily stress, and high levels of bodily inflammation. So what we do is we systematically use carbohydrates to actually reduce cortisol levels, but also improve insulin sensitivity. So carbohydrates reduce cortisol by stimulating an insulin release, which acts as an antagonistic to cortisol, therefore lowering it. Consuming complex carbs in particular helps stabilize blood sugar and can raise brain serotonin levels, promoting a calming effect and further mitigating the body's stress response. Carbohydrate consumption, especially in the context of intense exercise, has been shown to inhibit cortisol spikes and can help maintain a healthy hormonal rhythm. Okay, so carbohydrates have been demonized because their relationship between insulin. But the problem is there is a paradox that's going on that like you lower the carbohydrates, you diet extremely hard, you create a lot of insulin resistance due to high levels of cortisol. So these guys that come to us, and 95% of the guys that come to us have been under 2,000 calories, have been dieting for years and years and years on end. And the further you dig yourself into this hole of cortisol, the worse it gets, the worse insulin resistance gets. And without fixing it, you will never lose another pound because your body's quite literally prohibiting you from losing any further body fat because cortisol levels are so extremely high. So we have to understand the antagonistic relationship between the two, right? So like what happens within this paradox within society is that people demonize carbohydrates, so they cut them out of their diet. When they cut their carbohydrates out of their diet, they don't have an insulin release response that actually lowers cortisol, which therefore increases cortisol even further. So how the process works is when you eat carbohydrates, your body releases insulin to produce the glucose. Insulin and cortisol antagonistic hormones, meaning that a rise in one can lead to decrease in other. Therefore, increased insulin levels caused by carbohydrate intake can suppress cortisol and then serotonin mood regulation. So I know the first thing you're thinking right now is like, isn't insulin bad? Doesn't insulin store fat? Yeah, of course, insulin does store fat, but you have to think in the context of what it also does besides that. Like, you can't store fat in an organism when you don't have an excess of calories, right? You have to have high levels of insulin and excess calories, which means that if your insulin levels are high and you're overfeeding, you're overeating, then yes, you're going to store that as fat. But if you're eating where your metabolic maintenance should be and you have a good insulin response, then you'll never gain fat because there's no excess in actual calories, right? And I'm going to help you understand the insulin response and like why there is a misconception about insulin here in a second. But piggybacking off that topic and understanding the excess in calories leads to fat accumulation with paired high insulin, we have to understand what metabolic gridlock is, right? So the metabolic gridlock's paradox is you cut your carbs to fix your blood sugar, but your blood sugar gets worse because inflammation causes insulin resistance. When your body is inflamed from all that stress, your cells lock the doors, they stop signaling to insulin. So you eat a tiny piece of fruit, your blood sugar spikes, and you think, I knew carbohydrates are bad. No, you aren't intolerant to carbs. You are inflamed from avoiding them. You have created a state of metabolic gridlock where your body is too stressed to burn fuel efficiently. Okay, so what is metabolic gridlock and why is it important to note what metabolic gridlock is? And the truth is that metabolic gridlock in itself is the number one leading cause to diabetes, insulin resistance, blood sugar regulation, and various health diseases in the American society. So the Western diet in itself is what? High in fats and high in carbs, low in protein, right? Everything that we have as a society is high in fats and high in carbs. That's where we've gotten in the form of the food industry nowadays. But metabolic gridlock or mitochondrial gridlock is a state where your cell's powerhouse get overwhelmed and confused by too many different fuels, like fats and carbs at once, creating a traffic jam that prevents efficient energy use and switching between fuel types, leading to metabolic inflexibility, insulin resistance, fatigue, and weight gain. It's trying to run a car on both gasoline and diesel at the same time. The engine sputters, but it can't decide what to burn and it gets clogged. So like what is it? Like I said, what is the American diet? High fats and high carbs. So piggybacking off what we said about insulin, like what insulin is and as a fat storing hormone, but also we can't store fat without an excess of calories. The metabolic gridlock and high fat and high carb diets, your body doesn't understand what to burn, gasoline or diesel. So it burns one of them. What is it going to optimize to burn? Carbohydrates, because it's a more ready, available source of energy. It's easier for the body to burn. So it burns carbohydrates and it stores fat as high levels of insulin. So like we get comments on these videos all the time about like insulin, about carbohydrates like are leading to health defects. And like that's a half truth, right? That's a complete false reality and a half truth because high fats and high carbs lead to health defects within metabolic gridlock. So how it happens is that constant consumption, especially of mixed macronutrients, carbs and fats together, flood the mitochondria with more fuel than they can process. Fats and carbs compete for entry into the mitochondria, causing congestion and confusing signals about which fuel to prioritize. So a healthy metabolism switches easily between burning carbs and fats. Gridlock makes this switching difficult, a condition called metabolic inflexibility. So the consequences, and if we can see what is starting to occur in the common denominators of these facts that I'm explaining to you right now, is that fatigue and poor stamina. Cells can't generate energy efficiently, which is why you're tired and just exhausted all the time by 3 p.m., inefficient fuel use and storage issues, impaired nutrient processing signals and stress, insulin resistance, accumulation of unburned fuel, and reactive oxygen species. Okay, so let's look at this at a higher level. So insulin and cortisol are the main factors at play, right? You drop your calories super low to below 2,000 calories. You don't have an actual mechanism of carbohydrates to stimulate insulin, and so you accumulate cortisol over time. The cortisol increases over time, and anytime you eat more food, you have an insulin response that is very elevated, and the food that you're eating is like high fats, high carbs. So you're not only metabolically inflexible, but you're also overfeeding on fats and carbs at the same time, which is making the insulin that you're actually intaking store body fat. Okay, so what we do for our clients, amongst many different things, is we prioritize metabolic flexibility. We teach the body how to become metabolically flexible once again, okay? So how do we do this? We have to understand carbohydrate metabolism. So we use carbohydrate metabolism as a mechanism of healing the body from the metabolic level, from the mitochondrial level. So we have to think about the powerhouse of the mitochondria as, we just think about it like as a cell, right? Or like cell that you would see a depiction of in science class in 6th grade. We start to get this oil that is clogged on top of the mitochondria. And we have to come in and we have to fix that by, one, stimulating carbohydrates for the body to go improve health factors and give it the ability to go heal itself, but also lowering fat intake so that we don't cause metabolic inflexibility. Because the mitochondria will improve and will heal themselves if you give them the ability to. The human body is very versatile. But we have to understand the metabolic inflexibility as the main problem in prioritizing from one form of a metabolic pathway. So we have two metabolic pathways within our body, okay? And this is kind of piggybacking off of metabolic inflexibility and mitochondrial metabolic gridlock, okay? So carbohydrate metabolism versus fat adaptation. Let's start with fat adaptation. What is fat adaptation? Fat adaptation is keto carnivore, right? So macronutrient ratios, your carbs are near zero. Proteins, moderate. Fat is high. This is carnivore, keto, very, very low carbohydrate diet. So the primary fuel is ketones. Beta oxidation turns into ketone bodies. So the hormonal state is that, yes, you have low insulin, but you have high cortisol. But you also have low T3, which is a thyroid hormone that is stimulated from what? Carbohydrates. So the drawbacks is that you have a suppressed metabolic rate, a thyroid downregulation, elevated stress hormones, and reduced performance capacity, and you're at risk of muscle catabolism. So fat adaptation is the body's response when carbs are taken away and just protein and fat are available. So it goes through a process called what? Gluconeogenesis, to create glucose from fat and muscle tissue, right? And that's why we see a lot of catabolism going on with like low carb diets and like losing a lot of muscle is because when you're in a fat adapted state, your body has to go find fuel, recreate it within the gluconeogenesis process to support and provide glucose for the body because the brain runs off glucose. So it has to go out, it has to recreate all the machinery that it's meant to use carbohydrates for in the ATP process, and it has to go recreate that to create glucose called gluconeogenesis. On the other hand, with metabolic priming, which is what we specialize in as a company, we focus on a higher carb but lower fat diet. So macronutrient ratio is carbs are pretty high, moderate protein, pretty low fats. And when we say low fats, it's not no fats, it's lower fats. And like, because a lot of people will see us like comment on this video and say like, well, like doesn't low fat like restrict testosterone? Yeah, at a certain point, 100%. But like we don't go so low that we're detrimentalizing hormones. Like fat, for instance, is good macromolecule to utilize in the human body. It creates better nutrient absorption. It helps with hormonal regulation with testosterone, and it also helps the body create more hormonal adaptations to even the T3 hormone as well. Anyways, the primary fuel within metabolic priming and carbohydrate metabolism is glycolysis and glucose. Primary fuel is carbohydrates. Glycolysis to ATP production. So the hormonal state you're at when you're at a high carbohydrate, low fat diet, high insulin, yes, low cortisol, good, and high T3, which means that you have a thyroid that is overactive, that you have a well-producing thyroid. So the benefits is your maximized metabolic rate, optimal thyroid function, low stress hormone, high performance and recovery, and muscle preservation. So when we look at the two right here, when we talk about mitochondrial metabolic gridlock, like we have to do one, right? We can't have both, because if we have both, then we have a high insulin level, but also an excess in calories that is storing body fat. Okay, so we can't have both. That's where insulin resistance comes from, is having high carbohydrates and high fats. So we have to adjust the body for one. So obviously, just logically, the body works better off carbohydrates. It's your thyroid supports carbohydrates. It reduces cortisol levels. But on the opposite end, you could argue is like, yes, you're gonna have a higher insulin level. So the key to that, what you guys want you to understand, is that what we do as a company, we come in and we regulate our metabolic presence within our clients to regulate insulin levels better. Okay, so we have two types of people: insulin resistant and insulin sensitive. So if you're a fat adapted state, you're more insulin resistant because you haven't been eating any carbohydrates. So you eat a bunch of carbohydrates, your insulin spikes. When you're in a carbohydrate metabolism state, you are more insulin sensitive. So there's a transitionary period with each one of our clients when they come to us, when we have to transition their body into carbohydrate metabolism state. And I'll show you what that looks like with Waleed here in a second. Transition their body to carbohydrate metabolism state, and then start helping their body out by regulating insulin better. So why do we want a better response to insulin? So the insulin response here between sensitive versus resistant, okay? So this is like in time after meals versus elevated insulin levels, okay? So the more insulin sensitive person, and this is what we do for our clients, yes, has a rise in insulin after feeding, okay? But as soon as they're done, 45 to 60 minutes after they're feeding, the insulin levels start to come drastically back down, a rapid return to baseline. As opposed to insulin resistance, we have a rapid increase of insulin and then a longer prolonged period of elevation for that insulin leading up to, almost 180 minutes. So, which one would you rather be, insulin sensitive or insulin resistant? Because, insulin in itself, is stimulated by carbohydrates, but other food groups do stimulate insulin as well. Carbohydrates are just the best at stimulating insulin. So we would rather have a rapid, sharp increase of insulin and a slow decline, or a nice little spike of insulin and it regulates back down 45 to 60 minutes after meals. If insulin is by chance called the fat-storing hormone, but it also lowers cortisol. We want it to have a better insulin response so that we can have a nice spike of insulin, a regulation of cortisol, and then a nice decrease in insulin as well. This is what it looks like for an insulin-sensitive person, and this is exactly what we do for our clients. So let me show you. So, like I said, here's Waleed, 49 years old. He's down 10 pounds, eating more food, doing no cardio, right? Yes, and eventually he's only halfway through with us right now. We've got a lot of work to do with him, but this is a great thing to show you guys on how we regulate guys that come with us with diabetes, insulin resistance issues, and how we regulate all that in general. So let's see. I want to show you guys what this looks like with Waleed. So based upon the terminology and the science I showed you, I want to show you, first of all, 2 examples of his food intake prior. Okay, so he was anywhere from 150 grams of carbohydrates, and some days upwards of a lot more. But here's 2 days of his eating prior to joining with us. Proteins at 166, carbs are at 195, fats at 93. Okay, what's wrong here? Protein's low, carbohydrates are average, but fats are also high. So we have high carbs and high fats. What happens right here? Protein's solid, pretty good right here, not too bad at all. Carbs, high levels of carbs. What else? High levels of fat, right? So what do we have to do to make this possible? So what we do with each one of our clients is first of all, on our call with our initial consultation with our clients, we figure out what they've been eating, where they're currently at, where they're wanting to get, other goals in between. That's what the initial consultation is for. And that link will be below. And jump on a call with our team, see where you're at, see what's keeping you stuck, and see how we can actually best help you. If you want to join the 400 to 500 guys that we currently work with in the program right now, link will be below. We do one check-in with each one of our clients each and every single week. We adjust their macronutrients, we adjust their training, we plan for any contingencies that come with travel. And then we do 2 group calls a week with us and the rest of the community, and along with a bunch of other stuff as opposed to our education within our clients as well, because we educate our clients on how to do this type of stuff for sustainability. But I digress. That link will be below. These are the new macronutrients based on biology and current metabolic state. So when our clients come to us, we figure out where they've been, what they've already currently been eating, right? And we improve their macronutrients for better metabolic flexibility, for carbohydrate metabolism, and to reduce cortisol levels, okay? So as opposed to what we're doing right here, what do? We raise the protein intake slightly, We regulated carbs kind of where they had already been, a little bit lower. He stated in his initial consultation before joining us that he was right around 100 to 150 grams of carbs. When he had tracked, maybe a little bit higher. Don't know. Don't have what the tracking we had like a week before he had joined us. But we usually have our clients for the first 2-3 days of the program, like just track their food like they never even met us before. Anyways, 200 grams of carbohydrates. But what we do as opposed to that, low levels of fats, right? So what are we positioning the body? We're telling the body, hey, let's burn carbohydrates. Let's keep fat low. Let's burn carbohydrates. This is the fuel source that we want to utilize. And like as a caveat, really very quickly, like these macronutrients are for Waleed, not for you, right? Each one of our clients gets a different set of macronutrients based upon where their current metabolic rate is. The reason why he's at 200 grams of carbs is because that's kind of where he had been started at, right? So we kind of started that kind of where he'd already been at carbohydrate-wise, because we still want to regulate insulin levels, right? We still want to regulate where he was at with insulin sensitivity, and we want to improve his insulin sensitivity, right? And this is just a list of kind of daily goals that we have for him. You guys can look through these as if you want, but I kind of want to show you more along the lines of how we did this week by week. So 210 pounds. We implement a 5-day split. So notice right here, October 16th to November 6th, we didn't change anything for him after we implemented macronutrients. Why? As we wanted his body to fully transition first, right? So like you can see he decompressed a little bit, lost a little bit of cortisol, yes, and like his weight started to come back down. On the 6th, we simply just gave 25 more grams of correlated carbohydrates, and look what happens that week. Boom. Starts to decompress significantly, right? His body started to accept that better. So we structure our clients' plans by slowly giving them carbohydrates in a strategic sense to help with insulin sensitivity. So each week he checks in, like let's check his weight, his body composition, his feedback on his feedback form that we get from him, and we make logical, biological decisions based on feedback of how his body looks and how his body's currently reacting. And then 2 weeks later, same thing, a little bit more carbohydrates. 2 weeks later, same thing, a little bit more carbohydrates. And as we start to go up, all we did was like give strategic carbohydrate intake in a raised sense when his body would let us. And what happens over time? His body starts to regulate insulin better, starts to transition to carbohydrates better, have a lower fat intake, and prioritizes burning carbohydrates. So we get him all the way up to 2,800 calories right here, right? We raise a little bit of protein and fats. So that's a separate topic, but we just use carbohydrates in a strategic sense. And he lost 10 pounds. This is currently what I screenshot this today. This is current macronutrients as of today, right? 350 grams of carbs, 150 grams more carbohydrates a day. And obviously you can tell the difference, but also A1C is down, right? 700 more calories per day, right? 10 pounds down, obviously, but he's not doing any cardio. He's not doing any extensive restricted diet. We're simply just using actual science data feedback to stimulate his metabolic and metabolism to actually produce more T3, regulate insulin better, and regulate cortisol better. This is what we do with each one of our clients. He's halfway through. He'll lose another 20 to 30, 40 pounds once we start to align his body and after the metabolic priming process. But if you're somebody who is a diabetic, I urge you, like, we can help you. We can fix a lot of the stuff that like doctors are telling you that can't be fixed, that you can only take pills for. Like, the best, you can read this online. This is a very known, well-known fact within the nutrition industry, is that like the best way to manipulate metabolism is through your diet. But you have to understand how it works, how your body works, how the macronutrients works. And like each week within our clients, like we explain that. We change their macronutrients and we send them a video of us saying, hey, this is why we're changing what we're changing. Like, do you feel it? Right? Is there anything we can change for you? Do you need any like explanation? Like, it is a done for you white glove service that is going to help you not only lose weight, understand your metabolism and the right way of eating, and like lead to like longevity as well by understanding how we utilize metabolic processes within the body. Like we don't give a program, we give education, right? And that's why a lot of the guys come with us. So if you're somebody who's on the dark web right now watching this video in the middle of the night, or I don't know, like sign up for a time below. Like now's your time, man. Like it's time to stop being sick and tired and being sick and tired. Okay. We work with a bunch of great dudes. Sign up for a time and let's get you rocking and rolling. Okay. So if you like these type of videos, like, comment, subscribe. You guys support the channel as always extremely very well. And a lot of you guys are current clients who watch this channel as well. So see you guys. Let me know